Forgot to do that. While our speakers are talking, everyone will be muted. So if you have comments or questions during this time, please put them in the chat. And at the end, we will be enabling it so people can unmute themselves as we have a live discussion of topics that you are interested in hearing about throughout this series. And again, at the end, we will also be sharing the contact information for each of us who will be presenting. So if you have questions after this or want to contact us about anything, you're going to be able to have that information. So today we are going to start with Jen Doherty, who's the local government programs coordinator for Massachusetts Historical Commission. So Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. A lot of familiar faces, and a lot of folks I haven't met yet, so I'm excited to start this coalition off. So I'm going to begin with an introduction about what the MHC is, what we do, and how we might be able to assist your communities. So the MHC refers to both the appointed commission as well as the staff that supports that commission. We were established by the state legislature in 1963. And then 3 years later, with the passage of the National Historic Preservation Act, we were designated the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, for Massachusetts. We're within the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, along with other state agencies such as the Elections Division and the Registry of Deeds. And our 17-member appointed commission is chaired by the Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Galvin. The appointed commission members include representatives from historical, architectural, and archaeological organizations from across the state. The commission meets 8 to 10 times per year, and their meetings are open to the public. They review and comment on proposed local historic districts, National Register nominations, preservation restrictions, and they also award grant funds for our 2 grant programs. The commission is supported by around 30 staff and interns. We're led by an executive director, Brona Simon, who serves as the State Historic Preservation Officer and the state archaeologist. We're divided into 3 divisions: grants, preservation planning, and technical services. So I'll start with our easiest division, grants division. They manage all of our funding that comes in and out. As a SHPO, we do receive funding from the federal government. So the grants division applies for that every year and prepares our closeout documents. We also have an line item in the state budget to receive state funding that they manage. Grants also applies for other funding opportunities that are available through the National Park Service to SHPOs. And then they manage our 2 grant programs, our survey and planning grants, and our Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund. So both of these grants are a 50-50 reimbursable matching grant. The survey and planning grant funds projects related to survey and inventory, National Register nominations, preservation plans, and other similar documentation and planning projects. We are in the process of awarding these grants this year, and we will award them at our March 8th meeting for use later this year. Our second grant program, Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund, or MPPF, is for more physical preservation work. It's available for state register listed properties owned by municipalities and nonprofits. A preservation restriction must be placed on the building after the work is completed. And the grants division staff monitors all of our nearly 700 preservation restrictions that we hold, most of which are in perpetuity. We're currently in the midst of the application process for MPPF as well, and applications for that program are due on March 17th. Next is the Preservation Planning Division, which includes several different programs under our Preservation Planning Director. So PPD includes our National Register program, NR staff, along with other preservation planning staff, meet regularly to review properties and districts submitted for National Register eligibility evaluation. If a property or district is deemed eligible and the nomination moves forward, our NR staff work or accept the nomination in, review and edit it with the consultant who prepares it, and then ultimately submit it to the State Review Board, our appointed commission, for a final vote to send it on to the Park Service. Massachusetts has almost 4,500 listings in the National Register. We're among the top 3 states in the country. And about 1/3 of the nominations we receive are for tax credits. The majority are for just simply honorary designation. Next in preservation planning is me, the local government programs coordinator. I am the main point of contact for all 351 communities across the state for any preservation related questions you might have. So I work with all of our local historical and historic district commissions, as they move through the process of adopting a demolition delay bylaw or establishing a local historic district. I also present our proposed local historic districts to the appointed commission. Every other week, hopefully you've seen, I host virtual workshops on different preservation related topics, similar to this coalition, but a bit more focused on individual topics. And then finally, I am the state coordinator for our certified local government program, which is a program that's offered through the National Park Service for communities with a higher level of preservation activity. We also have a preservation planner who is tasked with overseeing all of our survey and inventory efforts. So when you complete an inventory form, they accept it in, whether it's provided by a local community or a consultant. They prepare the forms for inclusion into MAPC, which is our database of all documented properties across the state. And then they also administer the project end of our survey and planning grant program. Through that grant program, in fiscal year 20, we surveyed approximately 1,500 resources. And then we also frequently receive individual forms from municipal staff, local commissions and property owners, as well as larger locally funded projects. So we are taking in around 2,000, sometimes more than 2,000 inventory forms every year. The final group of staff in preservation planning deals with all of our data via MAPC and MAPC maps. So they enter the information from inventory forms into MAPC, upload the forms themselves, and then map the properties onto MAPC maps. And our final division is our Technical Services Division, or TSD. They handle all of our statutory review work. So this includes state and federal Section 106 historic resources review, as well as state and federal historic tax credit review. The staff for this division is split between historic and archaeological resources, reviewing the projects that fall under their purviews. In fiscal year 20, TSD staff reviewed over 2,300 projects across the state. The vast majority, about 1,300, were projects where there was no impact on historic resources or there were no historic resources. And then we have a few other responsibilities that involve all of our divisions. The first is our statewide historic preservation plan, which we're required to complete under federal law and update every 5 years. We're currently in the midst of updating our current plan. And it's important to note this plan is not just for the MHC, but it's really for anyone interested in historic preservation across the Commonwealth. So it outlines the major historic preservation organizations and agencies, highlights their recent successes and failures, and then lays out historic preservation goals and objectives for the coming 5 years. We also maintain the State Register of Historic Places. So the State Register is a compilation of other lists of significant properties and designations, such as those properties eligible or listed for the National Register, local historic districts, and properties with a preservation restriction. We're constantly adding properties to the National Register in the state, or to the State Register throughout the year. And then we compile and publish the book at the end of the year. You should be receiving this year's or the 2022 edition of the State Register in the next month or so. And so how can the MHC support your local preservation efforts with all of that work that we do? So first, hopefully you are familiar with MACRIS and MACRIS maps. These are really great products and really great websites that put all of the information about our historic resources sort of easily at your fingertips. And it's really important to keep updating your survey and inventory of historic resources, adding things to MACRIS, because we also rely on MACRIS at the MHC. So if something isn't in MACRIS and we get a notification about a project, we won't know that that historic resource exists. So kind of going then to the next point, it's really important for your local commissions, if you do receive a letter from us about a project, to make sure you respond and comment. You are really the local experts on your community's historic resources. So we rely on you to be our eyes on the ground. Going back to that first point of MACRIS again, we can't advocate for something if we don't know that it exists or if we don't know its current condition. So it's really important for you all to provide us that information and work with us on project reviews. As I noted, I host bi-weekly virtual workshops. Again, they're a bit more focused than this coalition meeting will be, but a chance to deepen your knowledge about historic preservation tools and different programs that you might take on in your community. So again, I encourage all local commissioners and planning staff and others in the community to attend those. They're posted on our website. I also hope you consider applying for our 2 grant programs. Both are usually announced in the fall. As I said, we're gearing up to award this year's winners for the coming fiscal year. And then finally, I'm just here to answer questions. That's how I spend most of my days. As you work through something or you need some technical assistance, certainly please feel free to reach out to me. I often meet with communities as they're working to update their surveys, develop a preservation plan, or establish a local historic district. So I'm kind of always here to answer any of those regulatory questions. So I'll close it out there. My contact information is here, but I think Lindsay will put it up at the end as well, if you don't already have my information. Thanks all.
Thank you, Jen, for sharing such wonderful information. Next, we are going to hear from Jeff, and he is a circuit rider for Eastern Mass from Preservation Mass. So Jeff, I will kick it over to you. And I'll be putting some links while he talks in the chat for all of you too.
Great, thank you very much. Let me try to get my screen shared here and my presentation up. And first of all, I want to thank you all for attending. I know that we're getting zoomed out by this point in our lives, but if you're involved in preservation, I think many of us recognize how wonderful it's been in the increased level of participation we've been able to have from many community members as part of our daily work by opening things up virtually. So thrilled to be here, and I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to what Preservation Mass is and does. We're founded in 1985 in Boston, and essentially we're the statewide nonprofit preservation advocacy and education organization. We're a much smaller organization than my colleagues here from MHC and MAPC, averaging about 5 staff members, typically with 2 full-time and 3 part-time staffs and staff members and a volunteer board of directors. Many of you know us from our various initiatives around the state. Erin Kelly, who up until this fall was the associate director, recently became president and executive director after Jim Igo retired in the fall of 2022. So Jim actually did not go away. He's still around. He's advising us in a part-time capacity on special projects, particularly around legislative initiatives. And we really try to work collaboratively to support local, state, and regional partners through a number of ways. I think the key terms are that you'll see here are advocate, educate, and empower. Those are our kind of 3 sets of work that we try to do. And again, we're a private nonprofit, and we receive no state or federal funding for our work. So again, we advocate for historic preservation and seek to educate and empower people to identify, productively use, and preserve the historic places that are important to them and their communities. And I think it's important to note that we, as Jen noted, want to recognize that you are the local experts in many cases, and we want to help you and support you in these tasks that help identify and protect and preserve the historic resources in your communities, what you think are important. So in terms of advocacy, partnerships are the kind of backbone of our work. We are a small organization. We could not do this ourselves. And to the extent that we can, we always try to form new partnerships with other aligned organizations. And we're thrilled that this partnership has taken off so quickly, thanks to Lindsay and Jen in particular. We have a small list of other partnerships here that Preservation Mass has in place now, but really this Eastern Mass model is based on something that's been going on for years in the central part of the state and in Western Mass, which has been kind of coordinated on our side by my colleague Stacia Kaplanson. So this idea of bringing together folks who are active in preservation at the Historic Commission level, but at any level in their communities, has just provided to be extremely helpful, I know, to those communities in the central and western part of the Commonwealth, and we're thrilled that we can add this service to the MAPC kind of catchment area in the eastern part of the state. So the ability to impact 111 communities and contact them and have that network already in place is huge, and we're, like I said, we're very happy that this partnership, our newest, has taken off so quickly. We only began talking about this in November, I think. So the fact that we've had our first meeting in the end of January is a testament to people's interest and energy to support this work. Another form of advocacy that we undertake is through legislative policy initiatives. Some people call this lobbying, but many of our most important preservation tools are in the control of our legislators, and particularly aspects of our work, such as the Mass Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit and the federal tax credit. Those don't happen by themselves. We need to educate our lawmakers and continue to make sure that those programs are understood by them and that those lawmakers advocate for them because they are critical to our work. We run a program called the Massachusetts Most Endangered Historic Resources Program. And since 1993, this will be our 30th anniversary of that program this year. This really works to identify and support the preservation of endangered historic resources across the Commonwealth. This is now a biannual program. We do it every other year. And we just announced in the fall 4 properties from the several that were nominated, including at the top there, the Weston train station, and right below that, the Springfield Isolation Hospital Complex. Here as well on this page is the Orange Armory and White Cliffs Mansion in Northborough. And while designating a property as a most endangered resource doesn't have any formal meaning in terms of regulatory control or place any restrictions on a property, it allows us to focus as a staff on these places that have been deemed important and to kind of provide extra service for those situations and help to bring about a positive preservation outcome for the folks on the ground who are working on them. We offer our annual preservation awards programs since 1988, and this is a great opportunity to recognize excellent projects, but also to bring people together. We did it in person again last year, whereas the prior year had been virtual. And it's also the most important fundraiser for our organization each year. In terms of education, our program and advocacy manager, Joe Ritter, who's a fairly recent addition to staff coming on board this summer, sort of shepherds these various programs and initiatives forward. And we do this in several ways by delivering presentations on a variety of topics, covering preservation planning, the benefits of historic preservation, reuses of different kinds of resources, et cetera, but also by sponsoring workshops on practical things occasionally, such as how to restore historic windows. We have our own series of virtual presentations called Preservation Conversations, which really came about during the pandemic when everybody was scrambling to get people together virtually in the absence of being able to be together in person. And these, I think we started these and they were weekly, which seems kind of crazy now, but now then they've moved to monthly and now we're kind of doing them periodically. But what this is enabled to do is to allow us to have a whole library of these presentations on different topics up on our website and on our YouTube channel. So it's created a nice video archive of helpful, informative presentations, and I urge you to check those out on our website. And those are continuing on. We have a monthly schedule for 2023, and Joe Ritter is busily seeking input on topics of interest from folks. Cruising the Commonwealth is something that we've done a couple of times, whereas it's kind of a listening tour of the state, where the whole Preservation Mass staff trundles to various sites throughout the Commonwealth. And I think it was coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, but that this timed to the preparation of the MHC 5-year preservation plan that Jen referenced earlier. So it's been kind of nice to have those listening sessions that MHC staff could participate in as well, to hear from folks on the ground, and that they could then take some of those ideas and information and incorporate them into the statewide historic preservation plan. So we did this again in the summer of 2022, focusing on Western Mass and the southeastern part of the state in particular, and saw a number of interesting things. You'll see lots of people pointing. That seems to be the standard historic preservation photo pose, is if you're not pointing at something, then you're not there. So it seems like a lot of my photos have people standing around pointing at things. In terms of empowerment, the Preservation Circuit Rider program, which is part of my job, really seeks to kind of connect with folks who are on the ground. Sometimes I say in the trenches because it can feel like you're in the trenches in some cases, but to folks in local communities who need support in various ways, kind of one-on-one support. So I cover the eastern part of the state, and my colleague Stacia Kaplanson covers Western and Central Mass. And we really kind of try through in-person visits and support through email, phone, and Zooms to deliver expertise of various kinds to folks who are concerned with preservation in their communities. Also, we strive and really worked on this during the pandemic to create a robust suite of tools on our website in the Preservation Action Center. And this ranges from everything we could put together and update about preservation project planning, fundraising, lists of model projects, funding sources, anything that you can think of. And we try to make that comprehensive. And it's one of the main things that we as circuit riders are able to kind of push out a lot of information to folks is by directing them to that area. So I urge you to check that out as well. And I think Lindsay was going to drop that link into the chat for you to see. We published a preservation directory, which is essentially a list of all sorts of kinds of professionals working in preservation in many different ways, from architects to contractors to consultants to representatives of other organizations. This is one of the main, or a frequent question that we get is, we have this project, we need, who are the, would be an appropriate preservation consultant or architect to work on it, or who is a contractor with good experience for this kind of work that you might refer us to. And we update that periodically, and that is also available on our website. Money is always in short supply, and we are thrilled for this is our 4th year, to be able to offer a small but mighty grant program. which is sponsored by another partner, the 1772 Foundation. So this began in 2020, and we were able to give out $100,000 for the first 2 rounds. And in the 2022 and now 2023 round, we have $125,000 to give out. That doesn't sound like a lot of money. It's very easy to spend $100,000 in one place, but really these are kind of aimed at smaller projects and smaller organizations where that level of support can be very meaningful. And also, we're happy that it overtly funds things like painting, and painting, you know, it's keeping a wooden building painted is critical. So many grant funding sources kind of discourage sort of what might be called maintenance, but we love the fact that this program offers relatively small grants, but to do those critical things to keep historic structures in good repair on a smaller scale. I think so far we've given out about 42 grants, and we're currently waiting to get the invited applicants in for the current round, and I think those will be coming in by the end of February, which is next month and coming soon. Finally, one of the programs that we interact with a lot is the Community Preservation Act. And those of you working in preservation, if you are lucky enough to be in a community who has adopted CPA, you know what a game changer it is for preservation. So far, 194 communities around the Commonwealth have adopted this, and 6,700 historic preservation projects have been funded to date, which is just a massive investment in the preservation of historic resources around the Commonwealth. So we got a lot of questions as circuit riders about appropriateness for kinds of projects for CPA to support communities who are looking to adopt CPA. And also, we're a member of the Community Preservation Coalition and kind of helped enact the initiative when it was first proposed in the legislation in 2000. So if you haven't visited communitypreservation.org, you should do that. The resources there are really quite incredible in terms of data and the papers and all sorts of information related to CPA. So I realize that was a lot of fast talking. That was a very brief overview. I encourage you to go to our website, preservationmass.org. We're here to help. We're generally pretty friendly. And once again, we're thrilled to be a part of this new coalition with our colleagues at MAPC and MHC. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff, for that. So me and my colleagues are up next. So I'll just say that, hello, I'm Lindsay Randall, and I'm the Regional Humanities Specialist for MAPC. And I just want to give you a quick bit about my background is that I'm a trained archaeologist, and in my personal life, I am a commissioner for the Ipswich Historical Commission. And I'm also representing the Historical Commission on our 3A MBTA task force for Ipswich. And I say this to highlight that many of the issues that you were grappling with and your communities are grappling with, I have familiarity with. And so I hope even outside of this coalition that you will see me and MAPC as a resource you can reach out to. So let me share my screen. Okay, just get one thing up. Okay, so MAPC, let me make sure I can do this. Okay, so MAPC is the regional planning agency for Boston and 100 surrounding communities. And our, why is this not doing this? And you can see this map. So we have a bunch of different subregions. So our mission is to promote smart growth and regional collaboration. And we use our regional plan Metro Common 2050, which I will drop a link in the chat in a moment. Let's talk about that. Sorry, bear with me. Right as my computer needs to. Do a thing. Anyways, I'll drop that at the end. So we are governed by 101 municipal government representatives, 21 gubernatorial appointees, 9 state officials, 3 city of Boston officials, and we have an executive committee composed of 25 members who oversee the agency. All of this is to say we very much directly answer and are overseen by you, our regional communities. And what is a regional planning agency? I know I had this question when I first joined MAPC. And what it is a multi-jurisdictional agency that helps different communities within their sort of area manage issues that cross city, town, county borders. We also work with other regional planning agency, and there's 12 of them in the state. And we do this through communication, planning, policy making, coordination, advocacy, and even technical assistance, which my colleagues will speak about shortly. And the arts and culture, but also MAPC more broadly, really cares about the issues of historic preservation and history, because we understand how it informs all the work that we do and how we need to sort of understand the past in order to plan for the future. But all this historic preservation knowledge and expertise is not just centered in our department, it is centered throughout the entire agency. So again, my colleagues, Andrea Harris-Long, who will be speaking shortly, Sarah Scott, Abigail Bliss, and others have expertise in this, from, you know, writing preservation and historic bylaws, right? Like to climate and disaster planning for historic resources, to tying economic development in with historical sites. So we run the gamut for all the sort of different expertise and ways things can work. And again, MAPC has been doing this work. We work historic preservation and historical considerations into our regional plans. We also have been, you know, with transportation, like there was the Battlefields Scenic Road Byway through Lexington and Concord, to again, economic development tied to historic preservation, historical resources, cultural assets. My colleague Anna Sanguta will speak a little more about this, but we are also the Historic District Commission appeals process for the MAPC region. And if you have questions, you can email Anna, which is here, but her email will also be shared at the end. And I will just say, as an aside, before joining MAPC, when I would help write grants for statewide organizations like Mass Cultural Council to national ones like the American Alliance for Museums, we used a lot of the data sets that MAPC has and generates to talk about the communities that we serve. And with that, I'm going to kick that over to Andrea now. So let me stop share.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Andrea Harris-Long, a land use planner and the manager of our technical assistance program. And I want to say thanks for having me at this meeting. While I am a land use planner and don't get to do as much historic preservation, it is something that's near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really excited to be able to share how the technical assistance program can help you with all of your projects and endeavors. So Lindsay gave a great overview of who we are as an agency and what we do. As she mentioned, we cover a lot of different work areas, ranging from different planning disciplines to community engagement, municipal collaboration, all kinds of things. And our technical assistance program really allows cities and towns in our region, so those 101 cities and towns on the map that Lindsay showed, it allows you to work with us and kind of tap our staff expertise to help you advance your local programs. And so our technical assistance program, it is a grant program, but it's a little different in that you get us as staff time and capacity rather than a check. So just want to be clear that you get to work with us through projects, and it's a little different in a grant program as that goes. I'd like to always mention how our TAP program is funded. So we do have two primary funding sources. The district local technical assistance is actually state funding that's granted annually to all of the regional planning agencies across Massachusetts. And that primarily funds the TAP program. But then we also have MAPC money through our Planning for Metro Common Technical Assistance Fund. This is our assessments that we get from all of our member organizations. That also funds our technical assistance. And then we try to kind of have our money go a little further by partnering it with other grant programs, federal funds that we get through our partner agency, the MPO, and different state and local programs, so that we can really stretch our technical assistance dollars and provide as much assistance as we can. All told, we annually award over $1 million in technical assistance to cities and towns. And so it has a pretty significant impact in expanding your local capacity and having us have this really cool partnership to help get projects done. So a few highlights of what the program entails. So as I mentioned, because it is kind of a joint effort that we can work together on different projects, every year we ask for communities to submit project ideas. We normally send out a call for projects in late fall, and we do encourage communities to reach out to staff before submitting your ideas to sort of help refine and kind of massage what a project could look like. And then once we get all of those ideas in, we look at the submittals and our staff expertise and capacity, and then we tend to award our grants on an annual basis, usually beginning in early spring. And the grant awards are varied in scale and size. Sometimes we'll do shorter term, smaller projects on the range of $5,000 to $10,000. Other times we'll do longer term, larger projects that may, be $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000. How we decide the technical assistance projects that we take on, we have three major priorities. We want projects that will advance racial and social equity. This is a significant value that we hold at the agency that is really highlighted in MetroCommon 2050, the regional plan that Lindsay spoke of. And it's something that we want to make sure that all of our projects are trying to address in some way. We also really prioritize projects that can help multiple communities. We do have a lot of cities and towns that we serve, and so we want to try to bring partnerships together and enhance that collaboration on different levels. And then again, we want to make sure that our technical assistance is implementing both our regional priorities, state priorities, and what you have as priorities at the local level. I won't spend too much time on this because I know that we're running short on time, but I would encourage you to take a look at MetroCommon 2050. There is a goal about supporting the arts and culture and heritage in our region, making sure that it's thriving and sustaining into the future. And we do have some different strategies specifically related to historic preservation, historic building adaptation. So if you haven't had a chance to look at MetroCommon, I would encourage you to take a look at some of the ideas and policies that we have in that document. We also, as I mentioned, have a lot of different departments and expertise at MAPC, and these next few slides really try to highlight how you could work with maybe our community engagement team to advance your historic preservation goals, or our economic development team to advance different goals. I think that each historic commission, each local group has different priorities, and so I would encourage you to think about how you might partner with us to advance your priorities and leverage the expertise and resources that we have at MAPC. We also have a lot of information about the arts and culture team that I don't think have a ton of time to get into right now, but they're a wealth of knowledge and expertise and resources for you all. Some of the recent projects that have been done have really focused on adaptive reuse and helping to identify new uses for historic structures, different ways of highlighting history and different stories, making sure that we're telling the complete history of local places. And then also we often, in my team, the land use team, as we're doing comprehensive plans, we work really closely with historic commissions, cultural councils, community preservation committees to make sure that historic and cultural resource elements in comprehensive plans can make strategic goals and policies to guide your local work. So we've done that in communities like Rentham, Dedham, and Revere. I'm going to kind of fly through some of these, but I want to make sure that I leave you with not just what we can offer you through the technical assistance program, but how can you apply and work with us. So we are sort of in this process where we just had our initial deadline for submittals. So January 16th, we had put the call out to all of our member agents groups and asked for those project ideas to come in. We've gotten a lot of really great ideas, but we do have a form that you can fill out. And the application is relatively simple. We just need the local community to give us their project idea, answer some questions, and then a historical commission or staff can fill out the application. We just ask that you provide a letter of support from a municipal CEO or member of the leadership team. So that could be a town manager, a mayor, a board of select member. And then we also want to note that cash matches are not required for this process. You can put your application in if you have local funds to help bolster a project budget, that's great. But really, you don't have to contribute anything to go through this process. You can submit your idea and then we can fund it solely through our technical assistance program. One last thing that I do want to plug is that we often will, as I mentioned earlier, leverage our technical assistance funds for state grants. And so because we do a lot of land use planning, I'm familiar with a lot of the land use planning grants that we offer through the state, but I would love to maybe hear from you all through the chat or other means, what grants historical commissions and other historic preservation groups are applying for, or you've received in the past, and see how we could maybe have the technical assistance program leverage those grants as well, and help you, if you want to work with us to do the project, how can we help you to get that grant to do the work? So I know that was flying through, but I'm trying to be cognizant of the time for questions and answers. I do really hope that you take advantage of our technical assistance program. Like I said, and like Lindsay said, we have a lot of interest and expertise and desire to work with you all in this realm. And so please reach out to me for program questions, Annis for arts and culture questions. And we're always happy to chat offline and, have conversations about what you all want to do and how we can support that work. But thank you again for having us. And it's really exciting to see this coalition forming.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're going to open it up to the floor. We've seen some questions come in. I know one was about what is sort of the goals of this group. And to me, the goal of the group is we are a resource for you guys, right? We are trying to bring preservation experts and people interested in it for maybe their work for cities and towns, but also just, general interest, to what kind of resources do you need, right? Like, what topics are you wrestling with, right? Is it like, what is a demo delay? How do we handle that? To, how do you deal with, historic preservation and climate change, right? Like, it can be very minute to very broad things. And we want to know what we should be like doing for next speakers, for other topics, other things you would like. So we're going to open it up to the floor. I see Maureen has her hand raised.
Andrea or Lindsay, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to explain for folks kind of what the other coalitions do first. So the other coalitions, as Lindsay said at the beginning, we've had coalitions active in the central and western parts of the state. And they, again, meet 2 to 3 times per year. And the ideas come from you all. They come from the local communities about what they're interested in talking about. And so some of the recent ones that we've had in those parts of the state have been, talking about the Mass Cultural Council's Cultural District program and how folks can have that, start that in their community. Talking about climate change and hazard planning, being involved in your local hazard planning process and the state's hazard planning process. Doing survey and inventory work in your community, kind of starting up with that, putting together a preservation plan, cemetery preservation. So things, that are historic preservation related, but may go beyond, what I offer in general workshops or what Jeff at PM offers as, preservation conversations. And how we usually do it is we have, one kind of main preservation that talks about the overall topic. And then, 2 or 3 presenters, usually from the local communities in that region, talking about how they implemented that project in their community. So, I presented about what a historic preservation plan is, and then we had a couple of folks talk about their preservation planning efforts in their communities. So we're looking for topics. So we're looking for, those things that are historic preservation related in any way that you are struggling with, things like Lindsay said, demolition delay or climate change or, whatever the case may be. Obviously, we don't have a coalition here yet, so we can certainly repeat topics that I just said from the western and central parts of the state. But again, we'd love to hear kind of, what you all are interested in.
And just Jen, sorry to jump in there, Lindsay. Jen, thank you for that. I think that, sharing information is one goal, but also just establishing this network. I think that we've found in our work as circuit riders that particularly historic commission members in smaller towns feel like they're, howling in the wind sometimes, and to really kind of bring together a network of folks who are doing similar things across many communities, I think is just very important. So part of our, the 2 of the many legs of our stool are really just getting this network, getting contact information together, establishing this so that you can communicate with each other and that we can come together periodically to share information and to have fellowship around this important work that we all do.
Okay, excellent. Well, now we want to hear from you guys. So you should be able to unmute yourself. I see Maureen's hand raised, so please go ahead.
Hi, first just confirming you can hear me?
Yes.
All good. Okay, thank you. Thanks to all of you who organized this. I suppose I should say Jeff, of course, but Jennifer, I've not met you, Andrea and Lindsay. I started out in my own career in Winchester, recruited for the Historical Commission, I was chairman of it, and then was on a design review committee. We have one in Winchester. And then I was recruited to run for, it's elected in Winchester, the planning board. And I think one thing that could be really, really helpful is to discuss the intersection of planning boards with historical commissions. It's a huge gap. And I feel as if we did a good job in Winchester of bridging that gap, and there's more that could be done still. As an early member of the Winchester Planning Board, we did not, at that time when I came on, have any planner, any town planner. And that was one of the big issues, was getting a planner. But during that period, our board members rotated and attended the sub-regions. That's probably a new term for a lot of people here, but not for MAPC. Metropolitan area is so huge that we're divided into sub-regions. And so I attended the sub-region that Winchester participates in. And so I got to see what MAPC does at a very close range. And I have to say, much of what MAPC is doing, is promoting, has to do with construction of new housing. I understand that, and it's happened at the state level, and there have been new laws passed even in the past year. In fact, I want to point out right now, one of the most recent ones is we still need a 2/3 vote of a town meeting to create a local historic district, but we only need a simple majority to create housing or bylaws, amend bylaws that add to housing. So there's a real disconnect between what I would say the general objectives and the agendas at MAPC are. And I read, I know Mark Petraeus, and I see what's quoted in the papers, and it's all about new construction, and it's often to the detriment of the historic buildings. And you mentioned the technical services grants. It should be understood, overwhelmingly, those grants have to do with rezoning to add incentives, usually new dimensional requirements, larger dimensions allowed by right through zoning that end up demolishing, creating the demolition of our historic resources. So I'd love to have some meeting that's dedicated to what goes on with zoning and how that intersects with the demolition of our historic properties. I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive. I think that we could be working together, but it's not happening right now. And it's really frustrating to sit on one side when I was 21 years on the planning board, a long time, more than 2 decades, and to see the damage that's done locally, and people aren't even understanding it, even as they're thinking, this sounds like good zoning, and it's not. But there are positive things we can do as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, we've heard in the chat and from other people, I think the whole issue around, demolition delays or 40Bs or 3A, that they want to have this, conversations related to historic preservation for that. So that's really good. Other people for topics that or other things that you want this group to be thinking about for the coming meetings? Rosemary.
Hi, Lindsay. I'm from Manchester by the Sea. I'm on the Historic District Commission. The 3A thing is sort of time sensitive. We're all supposed to be doing these plans. So if we could get some topic discussion about that sooner rather than later. I know there are a number of communities that are on the MBTA lines that have historic districts that are adjacent or at the train stations. So I think, sooner rather than later for that topic, if we could.
Okay. Doug?
No, thanks. I got actually a call from some local people trying to understand how the stretch code is applying to historic structures, all in favor of energy efficiency, but they're getting some advice from the state level and local level that they have to, do dramatic changes even to the historic structure when they're just putting an addition on the side of it. Enough that would be ripping off the exterior walls, interior walls to get the insulation and tearing out windows in order to meet the stretch code.
Okay, well, I don't have an answer for that, but no, definitely, when you reuse buildings or when you are adding to them and everything and how that would affect with historic preservation considerations, definitely. I think Rachel was next and then Barbara.
Hey, Lindsay. So I serve on the historical commission with Lindsay, but this isn't a historical commission question. This is a gravestone conservator question. So as a gravestone conservator, I often feel like I'm working against a lot of the agencies that are on this call, as opposed to working with to get work done, because our graveyards in Essex County are in such terrible condition. There really is a time sensitivity to getting work done in them as a craftsperson that works with her hands in them. So I'm wondering if we could do maybe something about how to collaboratively work with your organization, so we feel like we're working with you as opposed to feeling overwhelmed and feeling like we're fighting with you. So that's kind of what I would like to cover.
Okay, that's an interesting, I love that topic. Yeah, because I think, MAPC, but also, towns, planning boards, everyone, I know this tension from being on a historical commission where it can feel like you have different ideas and you're approaching topics differently. And so that can create tension, and definitely, strategies for how to come together around these very important questions. Barbara?
Yes, hi. Hi, I'm Barbara Kurz. My official job is preservation planner in the city of Newton, but my question actually has to do with my sort of side gig, if you will. I'm the caretaker at the Blake House, and we've sort of shut down for our regularly scheduled tours because of COVID, although I do still give them as requested. And my question has to do with, or I guess my request maybe has to do with interpretation. And moving forward, I would love to get ideas and input on how to do research about different communities. And this is specific to Dorchester. But I'm looking to sort of move beyond, the English immigrants in Dorchester, who, obviously built the Blake House and settled this part of Dorchester, really to expand, I guess, what, I can tell people on our tours.
Okay, yeah, no, another great topic, how to sort of uncover what aren't really hidden histories, but are often ignored histories of the sites, because, New England has deep history that goes back thousands of years, right? And we, as historic preservationists, really need to be uplifting those stories and everything. And I think we have time for one more, and then I will share the screen with all the contact information, and it will be Stephen, because apparently Ipswich is representing today, especially with questions.
Yeah, thank you. Building on Maureen's earlier question about how the Historical Commission can interact with constructively with the Planning Board, I have even a bigger topic or concern around how a Historic Commission might deal with or engage in the and raise up to the level of the capital planning project in a town. In Ipswich, we have more first period homes than any community in North America. And with some of the funding coming down from the infrastructure grants, it looks like climate resiliency might allow some funding for undergrounding utilities. But a little bit like Maureen suggested, so in our case, dealing with a DPW with our local town utilities, and then looking at how you take a project that might cost $1 million a mile to underground utilities and get that onto the town planning horizon is something that for a historic commission that I think traditionally our budget is about $3,000, right? So I'm not sure how many of you face this same challenge, but how we raise, the broad question is how we raise the awareness and the value in the town planning process in something reflecting the true fiscal worth of the assets that we're stewards of, and then specifically whether anyone has experience in how to one of the things this group might do is to provide a way of accessing some of the climate resiliency funds that are coming down the pike, and getting them distributed out into projects that restore that leverage some of the historic priorities that we're all concerned about.
Just if I could jump in, I love the fact that, and I learned this in a conversation with Maureen Meister years ago, that if you're a historic preservationist, the Historical Commission is not the only place you can serve. There are lots of other places to take part in preserving historic resources in your community outside of the Historical Commission. So planning boards, any number of committees, it's all intersected and interconnected. So I think that that's a really important point to keep driving home every time we have these conversations, is the number of different places that preservation intersects with all these other community and town-driven activities. So it's an important takeaway for all of us, I think.
Well, thank you, everyone. These are great ideas. We've been capturing them, the ones in the chat, the ones you did when you registered, the topics that have been brought up verbally here. So this is our contact information for everyone who presented. And then also, again, Anis and Gupta, if you have questions about the Historic District Commission appeals process. And for this group in particular right now, our next meeting is for Tuesday, June 6th. And everything, we don't have a topic or a speaker quite yet, but we are going to be taking what you guys have been talking about and refining them and looking for other resources. And again, seeing where we can help. But again, these meetings are not the only time you guys can reach out and talk to myself or Jeff or Jen or, Andrea, if you have a TAP question for some of the funding for different projects. Because I think some of these projects too that we have talked about we could fund potentially are some of the things that could also help you bring together planning boards, historical commissions, other organizations to work through these issues.
Lindsay, just before we close out, there were a couple of questions that came in. Just wondering if folks can maybe give an answer to them. One was about the sharing of the recording of this event and when that will happen. And then there was a question, I think, for Mass Historical Commission about the average grant amounts provided for the applications to their grant programs.
So yes, this is being recorded. It will be posted, I know, to the Preservation Mass website, but it will also be at some point posted to the MAPC website. We have your emails, so we will send out an email with those links and the links to like the TAP funding and all of that in a little bit after the conclusion of this meeting.
And I can just answer the question about our grants. So our survey and planning grants, generally we do them for survey projects, and it's now been in the $30,000 to $40,000 total project cost. So again, that is a 50-50 matching grant. So it would be $15,000 or $20,000 coming from the community. National Register nominations vary quite a bit, but we will fund those. Usually those are a lower amount than the $30,000 to $40,000 project cost. And then our MPPF grants, it's usually, anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 that we're funding for that project. You can do more if you set up an endowment for the property. But again, that kind of depends on the grants there.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone for showing up and sharing with us the needs that you have. And we're going to begin working between our three organizations to really come up with some ideas of how we can best serve you. But again, always reach out to us and everything. And it's not just at these meetings that you have an opportunity to get in front of us. So always reach out and contact us. We love to hear from you. So Thank you. I know we're a little over time, so appreciate everyone. So have a wonderful Tuesday.